So, dude, if you want to have a seat here, yeah.
Jesus. What do you want me doing? Fucking power squat?
I've been waiting like all day to make that joke. What's up, everybody? It's Michael with High IQ, and we are here with Jared Wright, aka the Chosen One. He is our data guy, so he's the one that makes everything on the back end of our systems work. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the data that we actually have available today. So, dude, thanks so much for
first and
being
foremost,
here.
thanks for having us. Jared Wright with the Share Group. We're out of Omaha, Nebraska. So coming out here to High IQ territory isn't too much of a chore. So thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So one of the first things that we wanted to do is talk about some of the data, some of the different data lines that we actually have available, and what that ultimately looks like, and how you can leverage that data with our systems to ultimately set more appointments, get more transactions in the real estate world. So I know one of the top priorities that we have today is to talk about absentee owner lists. It's just a very, very timely campaign that we're seeing in the market conditions, and that stuff's really, really working right now. So dude, I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about.
Yeah, we can kind of pull back the curtain a little bit and kind of talk about the different data sets that we have. So data is kind of the background of our company. It's built on 20 plus years of data experience, and I think that should go a long way, knowing that this isn't a shortcut on how we're putting the data together. But we started doing some consulting for a call center that was helping real estate investors try to find off-market properties. And within those data sets, absentee owner became a pretty hot topic. And so about 5 years ago, we decided to build an absentee owner database. And a lot of people, and still to this day, real estate agents do not even know what an absentee owner is.
Which is crazy.
And it is, but it's a term that people a lot still are very uncomfortable talking about. They don't really know the term, and all it is just non-owner occupied. So an absentee owner could be an inherited property by a grandma or grandpa, an investment as a family member, or a second home for a child in college, or an investor that wants to buy multiple properties. So absentee owners became our flagship product. And within the data, we provide you with the mailing address, so the actual owner of that property at a different location. So when you get the data, we provide you with two different addresses. So the mailing address, where you want to communicate the phone number of the owner of that property, but also the property address, the information about that property, because ultimately that's the one that you would want to represent, either for your offer, your listing, whatever that transaction is.
Awesome, yeah. And so one of the things that we coach through our clients as far as how to approach absentee owners is we have two different approaches, really. And Jared's got some incredible ways that he layers data. One of the most common initial approaches is to see if they are interested in selling those properties. And with the market being the way the market is right now, interest rates have gone up, buying power is going down, equity power is getting lost in some of those properties. And so as a real estate agent, it's a really, really great way for you to reach out to those people and say, hey, maybe now's a good time to look at getting a valuation done on your home and leveraging the equity that you've got into that property, and maybe sell that and wait for this dip that everybody's expecting. And we've already seen some step downs in equity across a lot of these different properties. And maybe then helping them leverage into some other properties. And then on the flip side of that is Jared's got some really great ways to leverage into some additional data where you look at absentee owners that really are really heavily investor focused, where it's people that own 3 or more properties in a certain area or a zip code or city.
Yes.
And oftentimes those are going to be the people that are going to be interested in buying properties. And so one of the most common things that we see when we reach out to these absentee owners is typically, as far as an objection is concerned, no, I want to hang on to the property. Well, great, I see that you've got 3 or 4 other properties. Do you want us to find you some additional deals and then turn those, what would have been a listing client, into additional buyer clients?
Absolutely, and that's so true. And I think, as you touched on earlier when you started speaking, I think the market is normalizing now, so it's not derived by money chasing opportunity, but it's now life-changing opportunities, why people need to sell. And so to take a couple steps back, we can kind of touch base on the data and how it's compiled. And I think that's important because a lot of companies out there do say they have absentee owners. And I think they rely on other data sets and other information to compile that data. And so what we do is we license the transactional record from companies like CoreLogic, Fairs, First Logic, and some of these other transactional data sets, data companies. A lot of times the competition, that's where they stop, right? They just have that transactional data, they marry that phone number on there that they have when that property closes or when that property refinances or whatever the details of that record is. We take the non-transactional data, like hundreds of demographics from like a multi-source database like Axiom, and marry the data together. So we create a transactional database that's very actionable with demographic information. And that allows us to put the most current phone number, either cell or landline, most current email address, and then validate and verify that as that record ages. So we're utilizing not just those sources that I mentioned, but multiple sources to ultimately build the data, and allows us the depth to slice and dice, know the age of the homeowners, know their income, their occupation, how many children they have. And there's a lot of different variables that you can really niche down to your market and build a custom list outside of some of the lists that we've created.
Yeah, and I think one of the most important things when it comes to your advertising campaigns, especially like Facebook advertising, YouTube advertising, if you're going to be running ads, you don't want to just run an ad to anybody, right? And you want to be very niched in your advertising, because your ads will go your ad dollars will go way further, and you'll be able to, with a lot less money, really saturate a very specific subset of targeting demographics. So these absentee owners are killer. Awesome data.
Yeah, so you can kind of touch on, just like you brought up, what ways to touch these absentee owners. So a lot of our real estate clients are picking up the phone and calling, right, as the number one touch. Sending a text message and SMS communication. Doing the social interaction, the loading the list into the ad network and displaying an ad. So there's a lot of different ways to, through high IQ, to ultimately touch the data. And so I think it's important to know that it's important to put a program and a plan behind the prospects that we're going after.
Totally, yeah. So we really focus on making that data super actionable. And so one of the very first things that we recommend doing when it comes to this data is running a video branding campaign. And the video branding campaigns aren't really designed to drive immediate lead generation, but it's kind of we make this into a joke. But when we reach out to somebody, because we do three things primarily for our services, is we do your advertising on those social media networks, on Google pay-per-click, YouTube, Facebook, etc. And then we start sending text message outreach, and then we start doing phone call outreach on your behalf, and then ultimately setting appointments for you. But before we set an appointment, it's really important to run these video branding campaigns. So if you're a brokerage that wants to start really saturating your target market in your local area, one of the first things that we recommend, and it's very tempting to try to skip this step, sure, I think, but running video branding campaigns where you start to dive into some of the specifics of your market and what's going on there, dive into what's happening with property values, dive into what's happening with your specific brokerage and your experience there, and really demonstrating that expertise, because then it becomes way easier for us when we reach out to those people and we start actually having conversations with them. This is what I was saying, we kind of make a joke about it, but which do you think is ultimately easier for us to set an appointment on? Somebody that's never heard of you, never talked to you, never seen you before, or somebody who's actually seen you, they've seen your expertise because you're demonstrating it in a very scalable way. You're speaking directly to those people, those investor targets, and letting them know what's going on. Like, the trust is already there, the social clout's already there. Yeah. It just makes it way easier for us to then actually convert that into an appointment. So video branding campaigns, like one of the very first things that we recommend.
That makes a lot of sense to me. It's like, and I say this way too much, and I'm going to say it again right now, but we are the treasure map to the gold. Yeah. But ultimately the brokerages, the agents need to go on that treasure hunt, and to go on that treasure hunt, you need to have all the tools in place to be successful. Just like you said, the branding campaign video is super important as you're out there navigating and communicating through other means, that they just know that it's a reliable, dependable information for them to fall back on to verify who they want to work with. And the hard part's not connecting the lead. To me, is ultimately closing and building that relationship once you have the lead. So we're trying to do the easy work here, but to touch on another database, so we talked about absentee owners, which is non-owner occupied. We also, and with the market normalizing and time being of the essence for some of these people, we have a couple of different databases. If you want me to, I can kind of jump in.
Yeah, I would love to talk about some of the other stuff you got available.
Yeah, no, totally. So these are owner-occupied databases. So the communication that you're having, these people live within this residence. And one of the most popular lists that we have, and I think just through the times of what the transactions are looking like. When I say transactions are looking like, how many sales throughout the year, how many of those sales fall into this demographic, and so we have created a downsizer category based off of transactional information. We know these people have equity in their home. We know that they have a master bedroom on the second floor. Then the non-transactional data that we overlay is the age and some of the other variables that tell us that these people are ultimately pretty close to wanting to move into a smaller property, right? The kids are grown, gone out of the house, they're sitting there with a master bedroom on the upper floor. So that data becomes very important for the agent, the brokerage, to target, specialize, and capitalize on that demographic, that niche, that database. Ultimately is just another example of what we're doing out there.
Yeah. The demographic of downsizers, I think, is probably one of the easier folks to work with because, and especially to secure future business, right? And a lot of what we talk to brokerages about doing is like, hey, we're doing marketing, not magic, right? These are people that you have to stay in front of consistently.
And I'm pretty good at magic though,
dude. I can see it. Yeah.
I could take some beers just to be
You and me both. Yeah, hey, we're in Colorado. We got a lot of craft brews out here, man.
The studio closes when?
Yeah, we're out. But yeah, so downsizers are killer. One of the other really fun lists that we really enjoy working with is the distressed properties actually as well, where brokerages and agents can come in and really be the hero in a potentially bad situation.
Totally. So and that's kind of brings up a good conversation, a good talking point, because there's two different ways to look at distress, at least in our mind, is distressed properties and then distressed homeowners.
Yeah.
Right. So distressed properties are a lot of those investor type opportunities where maybe they can't keep up with it, so it's time to sell. They're going to take a lower value offer now that the market's normalizing as far as like a distressed type property. Distressed homeowner is unfortunately coming out of a pandemic, there's some households that are affected by this, and we're able to tell based off of some of the responses that we get on the record of distress. So know that they're upside down on their mortgage. We know that their income's changed, so their job's changed in the last 12 to 24 months. In some cases, we can know some transactional history that maybe they're hitting a high interest loan place, or they're out there looking, kind of keeping things barely held together, right? And so those are great opportunities for transactions to help these people out, to offer a solution for them that could be better than the circumstances that they're currently in. So distressed homeowners is a very popular category. You don't want to call and say, hey, Bill and Joan, sorry to you're heading to the payday loan place. Let's sell your house. No, man. Would you like a fair offer for your property right now? Can we get someone in there to show you what the comparison is, or whatever the pitch is? I'm not a realtor. I did stay at Holiday Inn Express.
Yeah, so one of the things that we really love working on the distressed homeowner side of things is, you said this a couple of times, we call them pre-foreclosures.
Correct.
Right, so once you get, and I think if you're a brokerage or you're a real estate agent, you've probably had experience working on these types of lists where you get a pre-foreclosure list. As soon as you can get a pre-foreclosure list, everybody else can get a pre-foreclosure list too. And those guys just get blown up. And they're typically blown up by like wholesalers, the investors, where they're trying to buy 70 cents on the dollar, everybody's feeling ripped off. And so it's really hard to have those types of conversations where if you can get in preemptively with this like kind of strike first data sets that we offer, it's definitely more of a conversation like, hey, let's get you market value for your home and potentially leverage you out of a really bad situation or what could be a bad situation in a couple of months.
We just had a broker in Minneapolis call. He's been working with us quite a while. Bought a distressed homeowner list, downloaded it, started calling at 3 o'clock. I think by 3:30 he had his first listing. I mean, I think it was a record listing for us that we were able to get. So I think the times are, if you could find the right timing within the data, these people are looking for help. They want a solution. Maybe that's pride is in the way a little bit in some of these circumstances. So
yes,
definitely relate to that.
So that's a killer list. Yeah, and really easy to start reaching out and doing that with some of our programs.
Totally.
So the other lead lists that's kind of similar are like some of the probate and estate sales type lists, right? We actually
divorced is another one that's a little different than the other divorce sources, data sets out there. A lot of those guys rely on like public record or newspaper transactions to know that, Bill and Joan, who wanted to sell their house because they're just distressed or getting a divorce. But that's how that data is compiled. What we do, because we've been doing data for 20 years, is we know when a record changes from being a married household with children or just a married household with no children to becoming a single household or a divorced household. Just through various sources that are coming in, that we're able to verify that record changes. And so we categorize a divorced category. It's anywhere from 2 to 11 months post-divorce. I think there's statistics to be said, like 80% of divorced families sell the house that they're in
6 months.
Yeah, in 6 months. So we're at the time of trying to catch them 2 months after the divorce, not in the middle of it to look like you're kind of hovering to monetize, like you're an ambulance attorney or something, but ambulance chaser attorney. But anyway, you know what I'm saying? So find them at the right time to touch these people. And I guess, at the end of the day, we build these data sets off of the response of the data, but to find the right time for these, for you guys to prospect, whichever way it might be.
Yeah, and I think that's really pertinent. Like you get, 80% of divorced homeowners end up selling their home within 6 months of that divorce, where like the downsizers and even some of the absentee owners, those can be longer term research and buy cycles. These tend to be way shorter buy cycles. And so if you're looking for a list that can turn pretty quickly, the divorce list can be
that's
killer.
A good point.
Yeah.
And we used to say, with us, and this maybe is a good transition to talk about some of the databases, but we'd always be like, buyers are liars, right?
Yeah.
But now, because the market is normalized, we're starting to find data sets and categories for brokerages and realtors that are looking for actual buyers.
Yeah.
So you want to touch base on a couple of buyer lists?
Yeah, let's talk about some buyer lists.
So it's pretty easy. Michael touched on it a few moments ago, talking about absentee owners. That is our flagship product. So we've been able to slice and dice the data and categorize it as someone that's owned 3 or more absentee properties, not just in one particular zip code, but totally within their portfolio, are classified as a buyer. So that is one of our likely to buy data sets that we're excited to start launching for our network of customers.
Yeah, and I mentioned it earlier, but oftentimes, like that is probably the number one objection that we'll get, or an agent or a brokerage will get when they reach out trying to get listings from the absentee owner list is, I don't want to sell the property, it's a long-term rental or whatever, It doesn't matter, but that's probably the number one objection that we get. So being able to kind of flip that script, where if you see that this individual is buying multiple properties, you can literally turn that listing potential in a much easier way into a buying potential.
Absolutely, I think that's a really good idea. Another data set that's the owner occupied or household occupied buyer list is young renters. So you have a lot of recent college grads or younger professional couples, singles that are renting an apartment with high credit, high income, are looking to potentially cash in on American Dream. They have the good credit, so they can qualify easier. So that's another buyer segment that we have, is like affluent renters with high credit.
Yeah, that's killer. Yeah, so equity, right? When it comes to any of these lists, we're not targeting people that just moved into their house, right?
We use that for an omission in some cases for criteria as you're pulling a list. One of the biggest feedbacks that we get is like, hey, I just missed out on this one, or that property closed in July, I should have got to it a little sooner. We take that in consideration, so we are always omitting those properties sold in the last 24 months or 12 months before releasing that back to the wild. So a lot of the criteria speaks for itself, just because we do select off of equity, loan to value. Obviously renters don't have equity, but the other data set that is very similar to the likely to sell is a likely to buy, and that is we call it likely to buy. We also call it upsizers. It's the young families. They live in their first home that they bought. They have young children. The square footage of the home is small. They're looking to expand, right? So you can tell that their income's increased, their families are getting bigger, but they're still in that first house. And so that's another data segment of a buyer lead that the brokerages and realtors are taking advantage of now.
Yeah, especially if you look at some of those, people that are like those younger families that are, if you've got growing families, if they bought their house in the last couple of years, they've got tons of equity where they can leverage in right now, like the current buying and market conditions, now that we've kind of balanced out a little bit. They've got the equity in their house that they can cash out, liquidate to get into a bigger home. So
Absolutely.
If you're looking for buyers, that can be an incredible list.
That's another segment too. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity, and I think the most important thing for me to interpret to you guys is it's not a shortcut solution for everyone. It's a long-term process that we've built out through years and years of experience. I just won't tell you how old I am in person, but it's taken a long time to develop what we have, and we're pretty proud of it. So
yeah, oh man, that's killer.
And we're proud of being able to partner with someone like you, brother.
Yeah, dude.
And see where we can take this thing.
Yeah, I'm pumped. It's gonna be killer year. Testimonial stuff,
let's
right?
Talk some success stories, right? Like the reason we do this is like our man Jonathan says is what's our story, and I think that's something that to be told, because we talk about it internally of why are we doing this, and I think the reason why I do it is the return on investment that we see our clients, what we hear on a daily, the reviews we get, the continual orders, the repeat customers. I mean, that's what drives me is the success that the agents have with what we're providing them. So
yeah,
success stories are good, man. That's a good note to talk about for sure.
Yeah, I think a really great, a really great client of ours up in Washington. I know I've shared this with you. Kind of small town, rural area.
Yeah.
Like I'm talking 30,000 people or so, but they've got several different ancillary areas, and so we got a list of the absentee owners. And we got 2,800 of them, and we've rolled that list out with a branding campaign, text messaging, and an ISA campaign. So our call center is reaching out to those people on their behalf, and literally in 45 days, they've got six contracts signed with these absentee owners, and it's added up to about $5.2 million of under transaction contracts in 45 days. And
so I don't have my calculator watch, but what's the commission on something like that? I mean, that's a pretty good ROI from a high IQ client standpoint, right?
Yeah, it was a killer campaign, but I mean, it's just really one of those things that we can't do that without good data. Like the data has to be good, the data has to be fresh. We have to get accurate phone numbers, right? Because we can waste a lot of time.
Yeah.
And burn out a lot of ad spend with a client if it's not good data.
Totally. So touching on accurate phone numbers, we ask for client feedback all the time, and so it's important for us to get our finger on the pulse of what the competition's doing and also what we're doing. We had an independent study done in July of 6 different data sets, 6 different data companies, and they were measuring the quality of the phone number, right, to see what the accuracy of the data per se in regards to a calling campaign. And the stats that came back were really eye-opening in a positive, exciting manner for us. The data accuracy for us, we were in first place. The share group was in at 88.7% accurate from a phone number perspective through this 60,000 record campaign. The competition below us, every single one of the other 5 was below 70% accuracy. The only time they got above 70% is when they commingled 2 of the lists together. And so it just is a really big compliment to us on how we build the data. And those are, like I said, those are the stories that we love to hear about, because that same customer that's doing that calling she's probably our biggest rock star when it comes to converting absentee owner data that we've heard. I think she's closed like 16, 17 transactions of absentee data in the last 2 years. Just hustling. And in a state that you weren't allowed to prospect during the pandemic. I mean, she got really creative with the marketing, with the data, and had a lot of success with it, and still does.
Yeah, and I think it's really important too, like when you're structuring your different campaigns for the different data types, is understanding the frequency that you actually have to reach out to those people. So
you told us how many times, like when we first started rapping, we went through an actual example of an appointment set, but how many touches did it take to?
So on average, to really work a list is you have to reach out on average 18 times. And that can be through a variety of different ways, through text messaging, phone call, email. But on average, it takes 18 contact attempts to actually get a hold of somebody. And I think one of the biggest mistakes that most brokerages or agents will make on these types of lists is they'll run through it once and then they throw that list away, basically. And that's what's really cool, is a lot of these agents are getting success running through these things one time, and they're getting the low hanging fruit. But once you really start leveraging into additional contact attempts in a way that's really scalable, through automation, through good software systems, good foundational products that you've got for your company, that's when you start to see like incredible results. Because I don't answer the phone if I don't recognize the phone number typically.
Yeah, you can't be a snake oil salesman anymore, I don't think.
Yeah.
These days you have to show them what you're going to provide and how you're going to do it.
Yeah, so leveraging the data, like you can get this low-hanging fruit by calling through these lists, by text messaging these lists. But if you put a system in place that really works them over and over again over a period of time,
and that's
incredible
success.
success.
Right there, to work the data over and over time, it's important to update the data over time as well, because once you do purchase that data, it becomes stagnant, dude. And the longer you wait, the longer it is to have that 88% accuracy rate, because that is a time-sensitive number. I think statistics show 70% of in 2 years' time change their phone number or something like that. I mean, maybe I'm just spitballing 70% and bullshitting here because the altitude. But there is an unreal statistics of people that move, people that change their number, that their information. So if you're not updating that information while you're rolling through it multiple times, you're going to be banging your head against the wall. So keeping that data updated and current is important.
One of the things that we've seen, and like we explored I don't even know, just a ton of other data providers before we found you guys. And most data providers are updating their information, if they update their information at all. Most data providers are updating their information annually. And you guys update the info quarterly at a minimum. So
once we update the database, so like we're coming off of a master file update, we're already building with the sources behind the scenes of that next update. You know what I'm saying? So you're already putting in the updates and the changes to the data and the process. It is very complicated, long drawn out process that we've kind of mastered in a weird way through the years to keep it as current as you can and update it as current. And you're right, a lot of the companies out there that are representing something else, another product, is relying on someone else to update it, where we're in control of the sources that we bring in and how we keep the product current.
Yeah, there's a huge difference when you're licensing data directly from like the national or international conglomerates. And kind of a tip of the hat to you guys when it comes to the different layering that you put on top of that, and the data validation, because it's one thing to compile data, it's a whole nother thing to then once you've aggregated it, to verify and validate the data. And in most cases, what we end up finding, most brokerages end up having to do, like I'd say this is probably one of the more common things that we run across, where a brokerage is getting data from like the title company, right? And the title company hasn't updated that data in years in a lot of cases. And so it's really hard to actually get any kind of traction on those lists. But oftentimes when you are leveraging or trying to leverage a data list like that, it's multiple different companies that you have to end up working with. So you get address and name records from the title company, and then you have to find somebody who skip traces the phone numbers, and you have to have another company that skip traces emails and validates emails. And so we talk about this with our clients very frequently, especially at the brokerage level, where whenever you can consolidate systems, that's a beautiful, happy time in your business life, versus trying to use 3, 4, 5, 6 different companies to get the thing that you need. And so having kind of like an all-in-one solution to that has been killer.
Yeah, and the depth of the data is important too. We don't really open that up on a day-to-day, just because we know what's working and what's best for the customer. But on these larger opportunities and the integration of data to product to client, it's important to know we can really dig in and use those multiple layers of the various sources that we have to build a really powerful tool, man. And relying on the experts in the areas or the brokerages that we're working with, that's how you can really get get creative and really take this thing to the next level with the strategy of what's the next best thing, or how do we use the data to our advantage to become an expert in a certain vertical or focus on a certain area.
Yeah, totally. So if I could jump in and change a bit of the subject a little bit when it comes to the overall.
Leo, my favorite color is blue.
Long walks in the rain. Yeah, I've never been on Tinder. However,
I swipe left all the time.
I only swipe right to read books, and only if it's the NASA engineering handbook. So, so one of the things I wanted to talk about is the at the brokerage level specifically. We see that brokerages right now, everybody's, I think, kind of panicking a little bit, because it's not as easy as it was 2 years ago to find buyers. And 2 years ago it was like, how do I get listings? And now it's like, how do I get buyers, right? And a lot of brokerages rely on typically two things when it comes to revenue generation, which at the end of the day, like, we can talk about data all we want, but at the end of the day, the only thing that the agent cares about, or really the brokerage, is a transaction. And so they tend to get stuck in a position where they either have to buy the warm appointment, right? The basically pre-sold appointment from a company like Zillow or Realtor.com, for example, or they have to rely on an agent's sphere of influence to generate sales, which shrinks all the time. In fact, Zillow was the one that put this study together. They spent over $1 million putting this together. And running basically all these different surveys where they asked people, would you use your real estate a second time? And 80% of people said that they would use their real estate agent a second time, but only 10% of people actually do use their real estate agent a second time. And that's typically because they don't have good foundational systems and processes to continue to leverage their sphere of influence. So those are the two main things that we see brokerages rely on. They rely on really expensive lead gen, or they rely on agent sphere. And at the end of the day, we call it whatever you want, call it data, call it lists, call it contact info, call it lead gen. At the end of the day, the reason that a brokerage can be successful right now and not have to rely on Zillow is to get in front of those people before they're in the research cycle directly with a company like Zillow. And so these types of lists and this type of data is the thing that lets you get in front of your ideal targets before they're on Zillow researching houses. And one part of it's branding, one part of it's appointment setting, and the next part is obviously the transactions and closing contracts. But at the end of the day, that's the only thing that matters, is being able to strike first before they're on with a company that effectively owns 35% equity in every transaction, like Godzilla, as we call them.
It is a numbers game, and it is another thing that we didn't touch about, the different list, and because of your sphere of influence, I think a lot of the agents now and the popular things that they're doing is looking at the MLS of the property sold in a popular neighborhood.
Yeah. Looking
at, they got multiple offers in a 3-day time period per se, that then they're taking that and running a radius around the MLS sold property, and then using that as a prospecting effort as well. Yeah. And this is another idea avenue of the way the data can be used.
Yeah, farms, right? Yeah. But yeah, we make this joke all the time. I mean, I came from a long background of door knocking. For 11 years, I door knocked, and this is a way to door knock digitally, and I think that agents are very, very used to having one-to-one relationships and one-to-one sales conversations, and this is the way that people can scale and leverage into a one-to-many approach with their marketing, but very, very targeted.
Sure.